The message that changed everything came on a frequency that both fleets had agreed to keep open for surrender negotiations. Commander Brooks was reviewing casualty reports when her communications officer announced an incoming transmission from the HFY flagship. She expected another demand for human surrender, but what she heard instead shocked her to the core. "This is Fleet Commander Zekthar speaking directly to human leadership," the alien's translated voice said. "I request immediate ceasefire to discuss matters of mutual survival. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but every word is true. The HFY did not come to your world for conquest. We came here running from something far worse." Brooks looked around her command center at the stunned faces of her crew. In 3 years of preparation and weeks of fighting, no one had considered the possibility that the aliens might be refugees rather than conquerors. "Patch me through to President Johnson immediately," Brooks ordered. "And get me a direct line to Admiral Nelson and every other commander in the fleet. If this is some kind of trick, we need to be ready." President Johnson was in the deep command bunker when the call came through. She had been coordinating the global resistance effort and planning for the possibility that Earth might fall. The idea that the aliens wanted to talk about anything other than surrender terms seemed impossible. "Put him through," Johnson said. "But keep all weapons ready to fire. This could be a trap." Zekthar's image appeared on the main screen. The alien commander looked exhausted and sick, probably from the biological weapon that Dr. Walsh had deployed. But there was something else in his 4 red eyes, something that looked almost like desperation. "President Johnson," Zekthar began, "your species has proven something that my people thought impossible. You have shown that primitive weapons and determination can stand against superior technology. But there is something you must know. The war between our peoples is meaningless compared to what is coming." "What are you talking about?" Johnson demanded. "Your fleet attacked us without warning. Your soldiers are occupying our cities. How is that meaningless?" Zekthar was quiet for a moment, as if gathering courage for what he was about to say. 3 months ago, our deep space sensors detected movement in the outer galaxy. Ships that do not belong to any known species. We call them the Devourers, and they have destroyed every civilization they have encountered for the past 1,000,000 years. The human leaders exchanged glances of disbelief. General Martinez spoke first. "You're saying there's something out there worse than you?" "Much worse," Zekthar replied. "The Devourers are not a biological species. They are ancient machines, programmed to consume all organic life. They turn planets into factories that build more of themselves. Every world they take makes them stronger." President Johnson leaned forward in her chair. "Even if that's true, why should we believe you? And why are you telling us this now?" "Because my fleet is dying," Zekthar said simply. "Your biological weapons are destroying my people faster than we can treat them. Your resistance has cost us more ships and soldiers than the last 10 conquests combined. We came here thinking we could take your world by force and use it as a fortress against the Devourers. We were wrong." Commander Brooks cut into the conversation from her ship. "You're saying you invaded us to protect us from something else?" "That's insane." "Yes," Zekthar agreed. "It is insane. The High Council believed that primitive species like yours could not be trusted with the truth about the Devourers. They thought fear would make you weak and useless as allies. They ordered us to conquer you and use your world as a military base. But now you want our help?" Johnson asked. "Now I want both our species to survive," Zekthar replied. "The Devourers will reach this system in less than 6 months. When they arrive, they will not negotiate or accept surrender. They will simply consume everything living and move on to the next system. Unless we work together, both humans and HFY will be extinct before the year ends." The silence that followed lasted for several minutes. President Johnson muted the transmission and quickly conferenced with her military advisors. The discussion was heated but brief. General Martinez summed up the situation in simple terms. "If he's lying, we're no worse off than before. We keep fighting until one side wins. But if he's telling the truth, then this whole war has been a waste of time and lives. Either way, we need more information. Johnson reopened the channel. Commander Zekthar, prove what you're saying. Show us evidence of these devourers. We'll transmit all data my ships have collected, Zekthar replied immediately. Deep space sensor readings, intercepted communications from destroyed worlds, tactical analysis of devourer capabilities. Study the information and you will understand why the Kethver hegemony is so desperate. The data package that arrived was enormous and detailed. Dr. Walsh worked with teams of scientists around the world to analyze the alien information. What they found was terrifying beyond imagination. The devourers were not just another hostile species. They were a force of nature, an unstoppable tide of mechanical death that had been sweeping across the galaxy for longer than human civilization had existed. The energy signatures are real, Walsh reported to President Johnson. These machines are unlike anything we've seen before. They convert matter directly into energy and use it to replicate themselves. A single devourer ship can consume an entire moon and turn it into a fleet. How many are coming? Johnson asked. According to the alien data, at least 1,000 ships. In the first wave, possibly more behind them. If these numbers are accurate, the combined human and Kethver fleets would be outnumbered 50-1. The revelation changed everything. The war between humans and Kethver suddenly seemed petty compared to the cosmic threat approaching Earth. But stopping the current fighting would not be easy. Too much blood had been spilled on both sides. Too much hatred had been built up over weeks of desperate combat. Admiral Nelson was the first senior commander to support a ceasefire. If these devourers are real, then we need every ship and every weapon we can get. Fighting each other when extinction is 6 months away is beyond stupid, Captain Sullivan disagreed. How do we know this isn't some elaborate trick? Maybe they're losing and want us to drop our guard so they can finish the conquest? Look at their ships, Commander Brooks argued. Half their fleet is dead or damaged. Their ground forces are sick and dying from our biological weapons. If this is a trick, it's the most expensive one in galactic history. The debate raged for hours while the ceasefire held by unspoken agreement. Finally, President Johnson made the decision that would define humanity's future. We will work with the Kethver against this common threat. But we work as equals, not as conquered subjects. If they want our help, they withdraw all forces from Earth immediately. Zekthar agreed without hesitation. The sight of Kethver ships leaving Earth's atmosphere was one that no human had expected to see. Alien ground forces evacuated from the occupied cities, leaving behind equipment and supplies that human scientists immediately began studying. The alliance that formed was awkward and fragile. Humans and Kethver had been killing each other just hours before. Now they were supposed to work together to save both species from extinction. Trust would take time to build, but time was something they did not have. Dr. Walsh found himself working alongside Kethver scientists to understand devourer technology. The biological weapon he had created to kill aliens was modified to attack the organic components in devourer systems. Human shield breaker technology was combined with alien energy weapons to create new defensive systems. 6 months later, when the first devourer scouts entered the solar system, they found something unexpected. Instead of two separate species fighting each other, they encountered a unified defense force that combined human determination with Kethver technology. The machines had conquered thousands of worlds, but they had never faced anything like this before. The real war was just beginning, but humanity had already won something more important than any battle. They had proven that the universe could not break the human spirit, and in doing so, they had inspired their former enemies to remember what it meant to fight for something greater than conquest. Humanity had refused to die quietly, and in that refusal, they had found the strength to face the darkness together. Fleet Commander Zekthar stood in the ruins of his command center and tried to understand what had gone wrong. The invasion of Earth should have ended weeks ago with complete Kethver victory. Instead, his fleet was locked in a grinding battle of attrition with an enemy that refused to accept defeat. Half his ships were destroyed or damaged beyond repair. His ground forces controlled only small parts of the major cities and were losing troops every day to human resistance. The High Council of the Kethver hegemony was demanding answers. Other member species of the Empire were watching this conflict with growing interest. If humans could fight the mighty Kethver to a standstill, maybe other conquered worlds could rebel too. The empire that had seemed unshakable was starting to show cracks. Zekthar activated his personal communication system and sent an encrypted message to the capital world. The humans are not like other species we have faced. They do not surrender when defeat seems certain. They fight harder. Request immediate reinforcements. The response came hours later from High Admiral Vikaner, Zekthar's superior and one of the most powerful beings in the hegemony. Reinforcements are not available. The northern border worlds are under threat from the machine entities. You have sufficient forces to defeat one primitive planet. Complete your mission or face consequences. Zekthar felt something he had not experienced in decades of conquest. Fear, not fear of the humans, though they had proven more dangerous than expected. Fear of his own government and what they would do if he failed. The Kethver did not tolerate failure from their commanders, but there was something else in the message that caught his attention. The northern border worlds were under threat from machine entities. That could only mean one thing. The Devourers had been detected again. The ancient enemy that had destroyed countless civilizations was moving through space once more. Commander Brooks received intelligence reports from human spy satellites that had been secretly watching the alien fleet. The information was disturbing, but also encouraging. The Kethver were not receiving reinforcements. In fact, they seemed to be having supply problems. Several alien ships had been detected dumping waste materials instead of storing them properly. They're running low on resources, Brooks explained to her staff. The battle is costing them more than they expected. If we can keep the pressure up, they might be forced to retreat. Captain Sullivan disagreed. These aliens didn't come here just to add another planet to their empire. There's something else going on. Look at the way they're fighting. They're desperate about something. Sullivan was right, though she did not know it yet. The Kethver invasion of Earth was not about conquest. It was about survival. The hegemony was preparing for a war against an enemy that made human resistance look peaceful. They needed Earth as a fortress world, a place to make their last stand against extinction on Mars. Admiral Nelson coordinated the continuing relief efforts. Her fleet had proven that humans could fight the Kethver as equals when they had the right weapons and tactics, but the cost was enormous. Every day of fighting consumed ships, ammunition, and lives that could not be replaced quickly. Bill Crawford had become something of a legend among the Mars colonists. The farmer-turned-warrior had personally destroyed 3 alien ships using mining equipment and pure determination. His ship Red Dust was barely holding together, but Crawford refused to stand down. These aliens picked the wrong species to mess with, Crawford told his crew as they prepared for another attack run. Humans don't know when to quit. That's our greatest strength and our biggest flaw. Today, it's going to be their biggest problem. In the underground laboratories, Dr. Walsh's biological weapon was finally ready for deployment. The modified virus had been tested on captured alien tissue samples with devastating results. It attacked the Kethver nervous system and immune functions simultaneously. Infected aliens would become sick, confused, and weak within days of exposure. Dr. Stone worked with resistance fighters around the world to distribute the weapon. They used the same tunnel systems and hidden passages that allowed human forces to move unseen through occupied cities. Small teams would release the virus near alien bases and then disappear before they could be caught. This had better work, Stone said as she watched the first deployment teams leave the laboratory. If the aliens figure out what we're doing, they might decide to destroy the planet rather than occupy it. Walsh nodded grimly. That's a risk we have to take. Without this weapon, we'll lose eventually anyway. They have more ships and soldiers than we do. Our only advantage is fighting on our home ground and refusing to give up. The biological attack began simultaneously in 20 major cities around Earth. The virus was invisible and odorless. spreading through air circulation systems and alien-occupied buildings. At first, there was no visible effect. The Kethver continued their operations normally, unaware that death was growing in their bodies. Major Foster noticed the first signs 3 days later. Alien patrols in New York were moving more slowly and making more mistakes. Their coordination seemed off, like they were having trouble communicating with each other. Foster's resistance fighters began scoring more successful attacks against enemy positions. "Something's wrong with them," Foster reported to his commanders. "They're acting sick or confused. Their reaction times are slower. Maybe the stress of fighting us is getting to them." Similar reports came in from resistance cells around the world. In London, Captain Price observed alien soldiers stumbling and falling for no apparent reason. In Tokyo, Beijing, and Moscow, human fighters reported that their enemies seemed disoriented and weak. The virus was working better than Dr. Walsh had dared to hope. The Kethver had no immunity to Earth diseases and no experience with biological warfare. Their advanced medical technology was designed to treat alien conditions, not infections from an unknown world. Fleet Commander Zekthar first noticed the problem when his ground commanders began reporting communication difficulties. Then his ship crews started getting sick with symptoms that made no sense. Fever, disorientation, loss of coordination, and worst of all, a creeping fear that seemed to come from nowhere. Zekthar's own medical staff was baffled. They ran every test they knew but could not identify the cause of the spreading illness. The disease seemed to target multiple body systems at once in ways that violated everything they understood about biology. "Commander," his chief medical officer reported, "over 60% of our ground forces are showing symptoms. The sickness is spreading to ship crews as well. I recommend immediate evacuation of all personnel from the planet's surface." Zekthar felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down on him. If he evacuated the surface, the invasion would fail and the High Council would destroy him. If he stayed, his forces would continue to weaken until they could no longer fight. Either way, his career and probably his life were over, but there was a third option, one that terrified him more than failure or death. He could tell the humans the truth about why the Kethver had really come to Earth. The hegemony was not just another conquering empire. They were refugees fleeing from something far worse than anything humans had imagined. The Devourers were coming, and when they arrived, they would consume every living thing in the solar system unless someone was strong enough to stop them. The Kethver had thought they could take Earth by force and use it as a military base, but maybe there was another way. Maybe the species that refused to die quietly could be convinced to fight alongside their former enemies against a common threat. It was a desperate plan that would probably get him executed for treason. But as Zekthar watched his fleet continuing to die in Earth's orbit, he realized that desperate times called for desperate measures. The next message he sent would change the course of the war and possibly the fate of both species. While the space battle raged above, Kethver ground forces began landing on Earth's surface. Their dropships fell through the atmosphere like burning meteors, each one carrying 200 alien soldiers. The first landing zones were the major cities where human resistance would be strongest. The aliens wanted to break human will by destroying their most important places. Major Don Foster watched the alien ships land in what used to be Central Park in New York City. The city had been evacuated as much as possible, but millions of people remained in underground shelters. Foster commanded the 3rd Urban Defense Regiment, 5,000 soldiers who had been training for this moment for 3 years. "Remember your training?" Foster told his troops over the radio. "These aliens are bigger and stronger than us, but they don't know our city. Use that advantage. Make them fight for every street, every building, every room." The Kethver soldiers that emerged from the dropships were even more frightening up close than in the videos. They stood 8 feet tall with thick armor that covered their insect-like bodies. Their weapons fired energy bolts that could melt steel, but they moved carefully like they were not used to fighting in cities full of buildings and narrow streets. Foster's first attack came from the subway tunnels. Human soldiers emerged from manholes and maintenance shafts all around the alien landing zone. They fired rockets and grenades at the dropships, then disappeared back underground before the aliens could respond. It was not enough to stop the invasion, but it showed the Kethver that this would not be easy. In London, Captain Helen Price faced a similar situation. The Thames River area was full of alien troops trying to establish a base near the old financial district. Price had been a police officer before the war, and she knew every alley and back street in her section of the city. Her resistance fighters used this knowledge to set traps and ambush. "They're used to fighting in open space," Price explained to her squad leaders. "Down here in the streets, their size works against them. They can't fit through some passages. They can't see around corners. We can." The urban fighting was brutal and personal in a way the space battle was not. In space, ships died in explosions of light and metal. On the ground, humans and aliens killed each other face to face with small weapons. The Kethver discovered that humans could be incredibly vicious when defending their homes, deep in the Rocky Mountains. Dr. Walsh worked frantically in his hidden laboratory. The Shieldbreaker had been a great success, but he knew the war was far from over. The aliens had more ships and soldiers than humanity could match. They needed something else, something that would give humans a real advantage. What if we attack them biologically? Dr. Stone suggested. She was looking at samples of alien tissue that had been collected from battlefield casualties. Their body chemistry is different from ours. Maybe we can create something that hurts them, but not us. Walsh studied the alien samples under powerful microscopes. The Kethver were silicon-based life forms rather than carbon-based like humans. Their blood was blue and their organs worked differently. Most importantly, they had no immunity to Earth diseases because they had never been exposed to them. "It's possible," Walsh said slowly. "We could modify existing viruses to attack their unique biology. It would take time to develop and test, but it might work. How much time?" Stone asked. Walsh looked at the data streaming in from the battle. Zones around the world. Alien forces were establishing bases in dozens of cities. Every hour they held those positions made them stronger. "We need at least a week, maybe 2. "I don't think we have that long," Stone replied, on Mars, Admiral. Nelson's relief fleet finally reached Earth's orbital space. The sight that greeted them was both inspiring and heartbreaking. The human defense fleet was still fighting, but they had lost more than half their ships. The survivors were scattered and damaged, running low on ammunition and fuel. Nelson opened communications with Commander Brooks, who had assumed overall command after Morrison's sacrifice. Brooks looked exhausted and her uniform was torn from flying debris, but her voice was still strong. "Admiral, we're glad to see you," Brooks said. "The situation is desperate, but not hopeless. We've learned how to hurt them. The question is whether we can hurt them enough before they overwhelm us completely." "What do you need?" Nelson asked. "Everything you've got. Ships, weapons, ammunition, fresh crews. The aliens are good fighters, but they're not used to enemies that don't quit. Every hour we hold out, they get more frustrated." Nelson's fleet joined the battle immediately. The mining ships from the asteroid belt might not have been warships, but they were tough and their crews were determined. Ship captains like Greg Adams used their industrial equipment in creative ways that surprised the Kethver. The mining ship Rocky Mountain had been designed to break apart asteroids, but Adams discovered that the same tools worked well against alien hulls. His drilling lasers could cut through Kethver armor, and his explosive charges could damage their engines. Most importantly, his crew fought with the stubborn determination of people who had spent their lives working in the most dangerous environment possible. "We've been living in space for years," Adams told his crew. "These aliens think they're tough because they conquered a few soft planets. Let's show them what space workers can do when we're angry." The arrival of the Mars fleet changed the dynamic of the space battle. The Kethver had been slowly winning through superior numbers and technology. Now they faced fresh enemies with new tactics and weapons they had not seen before. The mining ships fought in ways that no military manual would recommend, using industrial Tools and improvised weapons with deadly effectiveness, Fleet Commander Zekthar found himself facing a problem he had never encountered before. Every species the Kethver had conquered followed predictable patterns. They fought bravely at first, then surrendered when losses became too heavy. But these humans seemed to have no breaking point. The more of them that died, the harder the survivors fought. On Earth's surface, the ground war was becoming equally frustrating for the aliens. Major Foster's troops in New York had turned the city into a maze of death traps. Every building could hide snipers. Every subway tunnel could conceal a bomb. The Kethver found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The aliens had superior weapons and armor, but humans had something else. They had intimate knowledge of their own world. They knew which buildings would collapse if you hit the right support beam. They knew where the gas lines ran underground. They knew how to turn a city into a weapon against invaders. Captain Price's forces in London demonstrated this principle when they flooded several alien positions by opening Thames flood barriers at high tide. The Kethver soldiers found themselves fighting in 3 feet of water while humans attacked from boats and improvised rafts. It was not the kind of combat the aliens had trained for Dot in his mountain laboratory. Dr. Walsh made a breakthrough that would change the war. Working with tissue samples from dead aliens, he had created a modified Earth virus that attacked Kethver nervous systems. The weapon was invisible, deadly, and completely harmless to humans. We can distribute this through the air supply in areas where aliens are concentrated, Walsh explained to Dr. Stone. It will take several days to take effect, but it should weaken them significantly. Stone looked at the virus cultures growing in the lab dishes. Will it kill them? Not immediately, but it will make them sick and confused. Their coordination will suffer. Their reaction times will slow down. In a close fight, that might be enough to tip the balance. The biological weapon was humanity's first real hope for victory. But first they had to survive long enough to use it. The battle for Earth was far from over, and the Kethver were learning to adapt to human tactics. The war that both sides thought would be quick was turning into a long and bloody struggle that would test the limits of human determination. News of the alien invasion spread across human space like wildfire. On Mars, Admiral Kate Nelson received the emergency broadcast while reviewing supply reports at the Red Planet Defense Command. The message was short and clear. Earth was under attack and needed all possible help. Nelson had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. Mars had become humanity's backup plan, a second home that could continue the fight if Earth fell. The Red Planet's orbital shipyards had been working without rest to build warships. Every asteroid miner, every dome farmer, every person who could hold a weapon was ready to fight. All units, this is Admiral Nelson, she broadcast to every Mars facility. The war has begun. Earth is fighting for its life, and we will not let them fight alone. Launch all available ships immediately. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Mining ships launched from the asteroid belt with workers who had converted drilling equipment into weapons. Transport vessels that normally carried supplies became improvised warships. Even civilian ships joined the fleet heading toward Earth. Supervisor Greg Adams commanded the asteroid mining station New Horizon. His crew normally spent their days breaking apart space rocks to harvest metals and ice. When the war started, they turned their mining lasers and explosive charges into weapons. The mining ship Rocky Mountain had enough firepower to destroy a city. We might not be soldiers, Adams told his crew, but we know how to blow things apart. Let's show these aliens what human miners can do. In Earth orbit, the space battle continued with desperate intensity. Captain Morrison's station Sentinel had taken heavy damage but was still fighting. Half his crew was dead or wounded, but the survivors kept the weapons firing. Morrison himself had burns on his arms from an exploding control panel, but he refused to leave the bridge. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell piloted one of the new experimental fighter craft. The small ships were fast and hard to hit, but their weapons were light. She had discovered something important during the fighting. Human pilots could think and react in ways that confused the aliens. where Kethver tactics were precise and predictable. Humans fought with creative chaos. Mitchell rolled her fighter between two alien ships and fired at their communication arrays. She could not destroy the big ships, but she could make them blind and deaf. Other human pilots followed her example. Soon dozens of Kethver vessels were flying in circles, unable to coordinate with their fleet. "This is Mitchell to all fighter squadrons," she broadcast. "Forget about destroying them. Focus on their sensors and communication equipment. Make them fight alone." Commander Brooks watched the tactical displays from her command ship. The human fleet was taking terrible losses, but they were inflicting damage too. More importantly, they were learning. Every minute of fighting taught them more about alien weaknesses. The Kethver were powerful, but they were not perfect. The first major breakthrough came when Morrison made a desperate decision. Sentinel Station was dying slowly, its hull cracked in a dozen places and its power failing. Instead of letting it be destroyed piece by piece, Morrison chose to turn it into a weapon. "All hands, abandon ship," Morrison ordered. "Set course for the alien command vessel. Maximum speed." Commander Brooks tried to talk him out of it. "Jake, you don't have to do this. We can evacuate your crew." "No time," Morrison replied. "That big ship is coordinating their entire attack. If we can take it out, their formation will collapse. This is our chance." Sentinel Station accelerated toward the Kethver flagship like a massive missile. The alien ship tried to destroy it with weapons fire, but the station was already too damaged to care about more hits. Morrison stayed at the controls until the very last second, then activated the station's self-destruct system. The explosion was visible from Mars. Sentinel Station and the Kethver flagship died together in a ball of nuclear fire. The destruction of their command ship threw the alien fleet into confusion. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly began making mistakes. Brooks seized the moment. "All ships, general attack. Hit them while they're disorganized." The human fleet charged forward with renewed fury. Freedom's Edge led the assault with Captain Sullivan standing on her bridge like an ancient warrior queen. Her ship was scarred and battered, but still dangerous. The crew had painted Morrison's name on their main guns. Dr. Walsh watched the battle from his laboratory and felt pride mixed with horror. His shieldbreaker technology was working, but the cost in human lives was terrible. Every ship destroyed meant hundreds of friends and families who would never go home. Still, they were proving something important to the universe. Humanity would not go quietly into the dark. The Kethver began to realize they had made a serious mistake. These humans fought differently than any species they had conquered before. Most creatures became afraid when faced with superior force. They surrendered to save their lives. But humans seemed to fight harder when things looked hopeless. Fleet Commander Zekthar tried to restore order to his fleet, but the damage was already done. The loss of the command ship had broken their coordination. Human fighters were swarming through his formation like angry bees. His carefully planned attack was turning into a chaotic brawl on Mars. Admiral Nelson's relief fleet was halfway to Earth when they received an unexpected message. The mining ships from the asteroid belt had encountered a group of Kethver vessels, trying to flank the main battle. Instead of running away, the miners had attacked. Bill Crawford was a farmer who had come to Mars to grow food in the underground domes. When the war started, he volunteered to fight even though he had never been in the military. Now he was manning a gun on the mining ship Red Dust, shooting at alien warships with determination born of desperation. "These aliens think they can take our homes," Crawford said as he loaded another shell. "They're about to learn why you don't mess with human farmers." The mining ships were not built for war, but they were tough and their crews were stubborn. They used tactics that no military academy would teach. They hid behind asteroids and ambushed alien ships. They used mining explosives to create debris fields that damaged alien hulls. Most importantly, they refused to retreat even when facing impossible odds. The battle for Earth had become something neither side expected. The Kethver thought they would face a quick conquest followed by easy occupation. Instead, they found themselves fighting a species that seemed to have no concept of surrender. Every human ship that died took at least one alien vessel with it. Every human who fell made their companions fight harder. As the hours passed, something began to change in the alien fleet. The Kethver were used to easy victories over species that gave up when defeat seemed certain. But these humans kept fighting, no matter what happened to them. It was starting to affect alien morale in ways Zekthar did not understand. The Kethver fleet arrived like a swarm of metal death. Fleet Commander Zekthar stood in the command center of his flagship and looked at the small blue planet ahead. His four arms moved across control panels as he studied the human defenses. The creatures had built more ships than expected, but they were still primitive and weak. Zekthar's ship was 5 times larger than the biggest human vessel. Its crystal hull glowed with energy that could destroy cities. Around him, 300 other Kethver ships moved in perfect formation. Each one carried weapons that had conquered dozens of worlds. "Open communications with the human planet," Zekthar ordered. His voice buzzed like angry insects through the ship's speakers on Earth. President Johnson sat in the emergency command center. The walls were covered with screens showing the alien fleet approaching. The ships looked like giant silver spears pointed at Earth's heart. Each one was beautiful and terrible at the same time. The main screen flickered and Zekthar's image appeared. The alien commander stood over 8 feet tall. His silver skin reflected the lights of his ship. His 4 eyes glowed red like burning coals. When he spoke, his voice was translated by machines, but still sounded cold and deadly. "I am Fleet Commander Zekthar of the Kethver Hegemony. 3 years ago, my people offered your species a choice. You could surrender and live as servants, or resist and die as fools. You chose poorly." President Johnson stood up from her chair. Behind her, General Martinez and the other leaders watched in silence. The weight of humanity's future pressed down on her shoulders like a mountain. "I am President Johnson of the United Earth Federation. My answer has not changed. Humanity will never bow to alien conquerors. If you want our world, come and take it." Zekathar's mandibles clicked together in what might have been laughter. "Your bravery is admirable but pointless. My ships carry enough firepower to turn your planet into dust. Your primitive weapons cannot harm us. Surrender now, and some of your people will live." "The only thing that will surrender today is your fleet," Johnson replied. "Humanity refuses to die quietly." The communication ended. Zekthar turned to his weapons officer. "Begin the attack. Show these creatures the price of defying the hegemony." In space above Earth, Captain Morrison watched the alien fleet spread out like a net around the planet. The human defense fleet looked tiny compared to the Kethver Armada, but Morrison had learned something important in his years as a soldier. Size did not always matter in a fight. Sometimes heart and determination could beat strength and numbers. "All ships, this is Morrison," he broadcast to the human fleet. "Remember the plan. Hit them fast, hit them hard, and make every shot count. For Earth." The battle began with a flash of light that could be seen from the planet's surface. Human ships charged forward while alien weapons opened fire. The first exchange was devastating for humanity. Kethver energy beams cut through human shields like they were not there. The destroyer Braveheart exploded in a ball of fire. The cruiser Liberty took a direct hit and started spinning out of control. Captain Amy Sullivan commanded the battleship, Freedom's Edge. She watched her fellow ships getting destroyed and felt anger burn in her chest like acid. Her ship was the strongest in the human fleet, but even it looked like a toy next to the alien vessels. "All weapons, target the lead ship," Sullivan ordered. "Give them everything we have." Freedom's Edge fired its main guns. The shells struck a Kethver cruiser and bounced off its shields without leaving a mark. The alien ship turned toward them and charged its weapons. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Peters was at the tactical station. He watched the enemy ship preparing to fire and knew they were about to die. The alien weapon glowed brighter and brighter until it looked like a small star. Then something impossible happened. Chief Engineer Tony Garcia's voice came over the intercom from the engine room. Captain, the new shield breaker is online. Dr. Walsh's modifications are working. The alien shields are dropping. Sullivan could not believe what she was seeing. The Kethver ship's protective barrier flickered and disappeared. For the first time since the battle started, an alien ship was vulnerable. Fire everything! Sullivan shouted. Freedom's Edge unleashed every weapon it had. Missiles, energy beams, and kinetic shells all struck the alien cruiser at once. The ship's hull cracked and split open. Atmosphere rushed out into space carrying debris and alien bodies. The Kethver vessel exploded in a brilliant flash across the human fleet. Other ships were having the same success. Dr. Walsh's shield breaker worked better than anyone had hoped. Human weapons that had been useless before were now tearing through alien hulls. The Kethver formation began to break apart as their ships tried to avoid the suddenly dangerous human fleet on the lunar colonies. Commander Steve Jackson watched the space battle through telescopes. He had been ordered to evacuate the civilian population, but many people refused to leave. They wanted to see their defenders fight. They wanted to witness humanity's refusal to surrender. "Look at that," Jackson said to his second-in-command. "Our boys are giving them hell up there." The Kethver had expected an easy victory. They thought human ships would break and run after the first few were destroyed. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to get stronger as the battle continued. Every time a human ship was destroyed, the others fought harder. Every alien victory made the humans more determined. Commander Brooks took over tactical command when Morrison's ship was damaged. She coordinated the human fleet with skill that surprised even the Kethver. Human ships moved in patterns the aliens had never seen before. They fought like a pack of wolves attacking a herd of large animals. The battle raged for hours. Ships burned and died on both sides. But for the first time since they had arrived, the Kethver were not winning easily. The humans were making them pay for every inch of space with blood and fire. Zekthar stared at his battle displays in growing confusion. His fleet should have swept aside the human defenses in minutes. Instead, they were locked in a real fight with an enemy that refused to break. What kind of species fought this hard when facing certain death? Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of Earth Defense Station Sentinel and watched the stars through the large window. 3 years had passed since the aliens came to Earth with their message. The Kethver looked like giant insects with silver skin and 4 arms. They spoke through machines that made their voices sound like metal scraping against metal. Their message was simple and clear. Surrender or die. The aliens gave humanity 5 years to think about it. They said humans were too weak to fight back anyway. They said Earth would become another world in their empire. The Kethver ruled over dozens of planets and thought one more would be easy to take. They were wrong about humans. Commander Lisa Brooks walked up to Morrison and handed him a datapad. Her face looked worried and tired. She had been working for 18 hours straight. The information on the pad made Morrison's stomach feel sick. Long-range sensors showed massive alien ships gathering near Jupiter. The Kethver were getting ready to attack. "How many ships do they have?" Morrison asked. "At least 300 that we can see," Brooks said. "Maybe more hiding behind the gas giant? Our scouts report they have weapons we have never seen before. Energy beams that can cut through our strongest armor like it was paper." Morrison nodded slowly. He knew this day would come. Every human in the solar system knew it would come. But knowing something and being ready for it were two different things. Earth had used the 3 years to build as many ships and weapons as possible. Every factory worked day and night. Every person who could fight got training. But it still might not be enough. Down in the science labs, Dr. Henry Walsh was studying pieces of alien technology that human ships had captured in small fights over the years. The alien metal was stronger than anything humans could make. Their energy systems were far ahead of human science. But Walsh had found something interesting. The alien shields had a weakness. They used a specific frequency that could be disrupted if humans could figure out how to build the right weapon. "I think I have it," Walsh said to his assistant, Dr. Rachel Stone. "Their shields work by creating a field that pushes away energy and matter. But if we can match the exact frequency and reverse it, we might be able to get through. Stone looked at the data on her screen. The numbers showed a pattern that repeated every few seconds. It would take massive power to generate that kind of signal, more power than our ships normally carry. Then we modify the ships, Walsh said. We take out everything that is not needed for fighting. No comfortable rooms, no extra food storage, no backup systems. Everything goes into weapons and this new shield breaker. Back on the bridge, Morrison received a call from Earth. President Claire Johnson appeared on the main screen. She was in the war room deep under the White House. Behind her, Morrison could see General Paul Martinez and other military leaders looking at maps and data screens. "Captain Morrison," the president said, "are your people ready?" "As ready as we can be, Madam President. The station has enough supplies for 6 months of fighting. Our weapons are loaded and our crews know what to do," the president nodded. "The alien commander sent us another message an hour ago. He wants to talk to me directly. The whole world will be watching." Morrison understood. This would be humanity's last chance to surrender. The president would speak for every human alive. Whatever she said would decide if the human race lived free or died fighting. "What will you tell them?" Morrison asked. President Johnson smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had made a hard choice and would not change their mind. "I will tell them that humans do not kneel. We will tell them that if they want our world, they will have to take it from our dead hands." The call ended and Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was young, mostly people in their 20s and 30s. They had families on Earth, dreams for the future, plans that would never happen if the aliens won, but none of them looked scared. They looked angry. Brooks checked the ship's systems one more time. Weapons were charged and ready. The new shield breaker that Dr. Walsh had designed was installed and tested. The crew knew their jobs. If humanity was going to die, they would not die quietly. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "long-range sensors are picking up movement. The alien fleet is leaving Jupiter's orbit. They are heading straight for Earth." Morrison sat in his command chair and activated the ship's communication system. His voice went out to every human ship and station in the solar system. "This is Captain Morrison of Earth Defense Station Sentinel. The enemy is coming. Remember why we fight. Remember who we protect. Today we show the universe that humanity refuses to die quietly. The battle for Earth was about to begin.